Our next speaker, Mr. Ahmed Monir, Head of Regulatory Sandbox at the Central Bank of Egypt, speaking on today's topic, Fintech Regularity Approach and Regularity Sandbox. Over to you, Mr. Ahmed.
Yes. Good morning, everyone, and good afternoon. Really, it's of my immense pleasure to be here and to participate in Sudan Fintech Summit for the first time, I'm sure. I know that our time is very limited, so I'll try to be brief and focused. Well, we will discuss today the regulatory sandbox approach and reflecting in CBE, Central Bank of Egypt regulatory sandbox. Well, let me give you a very little introduction about regulatory sandbox and why regulatory sandbox. So aiming to cope with the rapid developments in fintech domain and achieve the optimal balance between ensuring the financial stability and consumer protection, as well as advancing beneficial innovation to serve the banking and the financial sector. Central Bank of Egypt has introduced and deployed its regulatory sandbox in June, I think 2019, as a testing environment for fintechs who are developing their own innovative business models that are currently hindered by stringent authorization requirements and the regulatory uncertainty. Central Bank of Egypt regulatory sandbox is a virtual, constructed, well-defined space within which participants can experiment their innovation tests in and solution in a live and relaxed regulatory environment for a limited period of time on a small scale and under a well-defined parameters where most challenges and potential risks to the financial stability are strictly contained. So why we are investing in a regulatory sandbox? The main aim for investing or for establishing a regulatory sandbox to embed a compliance within fintech ecosystem and the fintech domain in an early stage. That's in order to ensure fintech innovation, manage regulatory uncertainty, develop trust of investors so they can pay their money to invest in the new ideas and the new innovations, and reduce time and cost to market for the fintechs to keep the talent of the nation, which is I see which is this is the main core for sandbox to encourage innovation and innovators and entrepreneurs and to keep them on track. When it comes to the eligibility criteria, really the eligibility criteria are common among regulatory sandboxes all over the world. However, they may strictly different from country to another according to the strategic objectives of each country. For example, in Central Bank of Egypt, we have articulated main 6 eligibility criteria. The first one is the applicant should be in a fintech domain and provide a fintech services. So all another issues or all another trends are not addressed for the regulatory sandbox. For example, techno, for example, agriculture tech. So the applicant should be within the fintech domain. It should be also genuinely innovative with a clear potential to improve accessibility and efficiency in the provision of financial services. However, we may accept the fintech applicants that provide an ordinary or traditional financial service, but it should be provided within innovative technology. Like we can accept a traditional activity like remittance, but it should be carried out through a new technology or innovative technology like the blockchain or DLT. The third option, the third eligibility criteria, it should be achieving the beneficial of customers, and that can be directly through using the provided service or indirectly via supporting the market competition. Also, the applicant should be in a real need to the regulatory sandbox, and here we mean the regulatory uncertainty, which can be either because of the conflict with the existing regulations or because of the lack of regulating rules for this activity. For example, like now in Egypt, we have no regulations for crowdfunding and peer-to-peer lending. So this is an enough reason and an enough need to go through the regulatory sandbox, for example. Also, the applicant should be mature enough and ready to be deployed in the market. At least it should have a prototype to be developed. And finally, it should support the national direction of financial institution and the digital transformation of Egypt, or generally, it should support the national direction for the country. When it comes to principles, we must highlight here that the regulatory sandbox is not must be lightly and not circumvent for the legal and regulatory requirements already in place, and the fintech applicant shall guarantee to respect all related laws, and that cannot be ways. Regulatory sandbox is a cohort. One of our principles, our strategic decisions should be determined before the starting of the regulatory sandbox, which we have that the country have to determine the ongoing or the operating model. It can be on cohort, like FCA in UK, or it can be ongoing basis like max regulatory sandbox, like in Singapore. The decision should be according to the capability of the country or of the regulator to manage this regulatory sandbox. Providing regulatory guidance, sandbox should provide the required regulatory guidance to the fintech innovators during all the stages of regulatory sandbox according to the nature of each activity. And here I'd like to highlight that sandbox should determine the number of applicants that can be accepted according to their capabilities. That's to ensure that adequate guidance and supervision can be provided to all participants. And when it comes to the principle relating the target audience for the regulatory sandbox, it should be determined if it will be only for the local or regional or the international startups. For Egypt, we went to the last choice. We are open for all fintechs, either it's local, regional, international, but we have one condition, that we are accepting these fintechs in case of intending to deploy in the Egyptian market. One of the principles that should be determined also is regulatory sandbox fees. Some countries provide it in a cost, and some countries provide regulatory sandbox for free. We are in Central Bank of Egypt to provide these services for free. However, applicant must own his required resources to achieve his test. When it comes to benefits, really, sandbox is a win-win situation. It's not only important for the fintechs, it's also very important and crucial for the regulator. As I said, it's win-win situation. For the regulator, it gives the regulators a chance to pinpoint and revise the fintech regulatory challenges and obstacles based on risk-based approach. and let the regulatory explore disruptive fintech technologies and solutions to be regulated, and to open it's such an opener eye for the regulator to know that the most important and the new fintech trends that needs to be regulated, and for sure for fintech innovator to reduce time to market and accordingly to reduce the cost and to handle the regulatory uncertainty, and last to increase investors' trust. We have a good example in Egypt that when the applicant accepted to test in the regulatory sandbox, we know that a lot of investors chasing them to invest because the regulator credibility and because of handling the regulatory uncertainty that hindered the investors to invest in these startups. When it comes to who is eligible to access the regulatory sandbox, we are open. By the way, there are many approaches. Some regulatory sandboxes is only dedicated for startups, and other regulatory sandboxes are open for all innovative activities without paying attention for the provider. It could be a fintech startup, it could be bank, it could be incumbent financial institution. So we went to the last choice. We are open for financial institutions, for banks, for all incumbent financial institutions that have a new or innovative fintech activity, and for sure for the startups. But we give the priority for the startups. In case of a choice, in case of equality in the choice, we give the priority to the startups. Startups should be commercially registered, mature with a finalized prototype solution, and we prefer to work with fintech startups that they are backed by financial institutions. During the regulatory sandbox stages, we have 5 stages, starting from the application stage. Applicant can easily, once we announce the opening of the new cohort, and the applicant after that can apply by filling the online application. The second stage, by the way, we give 1 month for getting the applications. Once we have received the application, the second stage is starting. We are starting to evaluate the applicant according to or against the announced eligibility criteria. Once we have finished this stage, we are going to the most important stage, which is the preparation stage. In this stage, we are working very closely with the applicants in drawing all the aspects of the experimentation scenario that will be that should be strictly followed during the experimentation stage. Once we agreed the scenario, the full scenario, including the determining the testing parameters, the caps, the required reports, and a lot of other things. Once we have agreed this application, we can go immediately to the experimentation stage. And in this stage, the applicant can experiment all their solutions in life in a very contained and maintained regulatory environment where all potential risks can be contained. Finally, the graduation stage after the time, after the determined time of the testing, it should be, it can be the time of the testing, it can be differed from solution to solution. We have the minimum time is 3 months, and the maximum time not exceeded 1 year and 1 month and a half. Yes, it's so the time of experimentation starting from 3 months to 18 months. Then the graduation stage, when we arrive the graduation stage, we can find revising all the reports and revising all the experimentation stage and the details. Then when the applicant is following all these parameters, we can give him some kind of letter to graduation letter that allowing them to work in a very limited scope, or the applicant should stop his testing or his phasing and waiting for the new regulations in case of taking the decision to issue the new regulations for the activities according to the results that we have from the regulatory sandbox. Currently, we have achieved the 2 cohorts. The first cohort was a pilot cohort, was a themed cohort dedicating eKYC. We have received 5 applicants. We went through them. There only 1 applicant from the 5 who has fulfilled all the requirements and went to the testing phase. Second, we are finalizing the second cohort. It was open themed cohort. We have, I think we have received 24 applicants, and now we are working with 5 applicants according to the eligibility criteria and according to the decision of the steering committee of the sandbox to determine the fintech trends that needs to be testing in the regulatory sandbox. So for my last speech, and I know we are a very limited time. So my last advice for our for other peer central banks who intend to deploy and provide a regulatory sandbox, the most important thing in this stage that to gain and give the peering reviewing with a lot of countries and a lot of central banks that have already done this homework before. By the way, we are in the central bank did this homework, and it was very useful, and they are provided us with a lot of experiences and a lot of learned lessons that make us avoid a lot of the challenges in operating the regulatory sandbox in the future. Thank you very much for hearing and for being with you. And let me know if there is any questions.
Mr. Ahmed, that was so nicely explained, and even I understood a little bit about sandbox now, you know. So right now we don't have any questions. So any questions for Mr. Ahmed, please share it with me and I will get it answered by Mr. Ahmed. Thank you, Mr. Ahmed, for your time.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you very much.